Hello friends, good morning. I'm Rama Tandon and I'm a dyslexia therapist. Today I'm going to share another interesting story with your child. Now because the story is a little longer, what I suggest is you let your child see the pages of the story and let the child hear my voice. So this way the child can read the story with me, and then maybe you can keep practicing the same story over and over again, because reading never really is, you can never run short of time when you want to read a storybook. And please share any of your stories that you want me to read to your child, any favorite story that you think your child will enjoy watching me and reading with me. It will be great. Keep watching. If you have any feedback, please share the details with me, and everything is in the description below. Thank you so much.
The Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet little girl lived with her parents in a small village surrounded by forest. Her real name was Macy, but everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood because of a scarlet cloak that her old grandmother had made her and which she always wore. Little Red Riding Hood had an old granny who lived on the other side of the forest. One morning, a woodpecker came to Little Red Riding Hood and said, "Your granny is not well and wants to see you soon." Little Red Riding Hood immediately rushed to her granny and conveyed the message to her. Little Red Riding's mother packed a bottle of apple juice and cake in the basket and said to Little Red Riding Hood, "Take this basket to your granny. Hurry and don't leave the path. And remember, don't talk to anyone. Make sure that you are back home before dark." Her mother cautioned her. Little Red Riding Hood promised her mother, "I'll do everything right, don't worry." And Little Red Riding Hood set out happily. Her granny lived into the forest, an hour's walk from the village. She walked down the slope with a basket in her hand. Little Red Riding Hood noticed beautiful flowers in the way. While picking the flowers, a big grey wolf, licking his long paws, jumped in front of Little Red Riding Hood. "Oh no!" Little Red Riding Hood screamed out of fear. The cunning wolf tried to befriend her. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood. I am your friend. And where may you be going, sweet little girl?" Little Red Riding Hood replied with a smile. "Oh, my granny is not well, so I'm taking her some food in my basket, and I am to see how she is and tell mother when I get back." "Won't you tell me where she lives?" asked the wolf. "Just behind the forest. Her house is near the trees," replied Little Red Riding Hood. The hungry wolf licked his lips. He wanted to eat Little Red Riding Hood, but then he had an idea. Won't you take a bouquet for your granny?" asked the cunningly. "Of course I'll," replied Little Red Riding Hood, and again started picking flowers for making a bouquet for her granny. In the meanwhile, the wolf sneaked out from there. He ran ahead quickly to Granny's house. He knocked at the door. "Who is there?" said a very weak voice from inside. "It's only I, dear Granny, your little Red Riding Hood, with some cake for you in my basket," answered the wolf. "Just come in. It's not locked," replied the granny. So the big wolf opened the door and stormed into the room. "Oh no!" screamed the old woman. The grinning wolf was standing right in front of her. The poor old granny jumped out of her bed and started running, but the mighty wolf leaped forward. The sick granny was too weak to run away, so she became an easy prey for the wolf, and he swallowed the granny. Then he put Granny's nightcap on his head and laid on the bed. He wore her spectacles too. He pulled the blanket to cover up his face. Soon Little Red Riding Hood knocked at the door. "Who is knocking at the door?" said the wolf gently. "It's me," replied the little girl. "It's open, my dear. Come in," said the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood went inside. There was her granny, but she looked strange. "Granny, what big ears you have!" asked Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to hear you with," replied the wolf. "And Granny, what big eyes you have!" said Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to see you with," replied the wolf. "And oh, Granny," cried Little Red Riding Hood, "what great sharp teeth you have!" "All the better to eat you with," growled the wolf, springing up suddenly at Little Red Riding Hood. And with that, the wicked wolf swallowed the Little Red Riding Hood. The little one cried, "Help! Please help!" as she reached into the wolf's belly. Then the wolf went back to bed. In the meanwhile, Granny's neighbor, a huntsman, passed by Granny's house, Granny's cottage. He wondered why the old woman was snoring so loudly. He went into the cottage and saw the wolf on the bed. The huntsman eyed upon the huge stomach of the wolf. He could hear Little Red Riding Hood calling out from the wolf's stomach, "Let us out!" Because the huntsman thought that Little Red Riding Hood and her granny could still be saved, he didn't shoot the wolf. Instead, he cut open the wolf's stomach with his long hunting knife. Surprisingly, Little Red Riding Hood jumped out of the wolf's stomach, and a few moments later, the granny followed and was still alive. They thanked the huntsman. Everyone was happy that the wicked wolf was dead. Granny hugged Little Red Riding Hood with love. Suddenly, Little Red Riding Hood got down from her arms and ran towards the basket. Little Red Riding Hood took out all the eatables she had for Granny and laid them on the table. They all sat down to have a glass of cool apple juice and delicious cake that Little Red Riding Hood's mother had baked. The huntsman looked out and said to Little Red Riding Hood, "You should leave right now. Soon it will be dark outside." "Yes, you're right. I shall leave now," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I can accompany you as I am going to the village," said the huntsman. Little Red Riding Hood happily agreed. Little Red Riding Hood bade goodbye to her granny and promised her never to talk to strangers and wander all alone in the forest.